Me personally, a hot take would be, if you're a fan of this restaurant, kind of underrated, been around for a minute, hot take, Cracker Barrel, super underrated. Oh, there we go. Cracker Barrel, super underrated. Not overrated, underrated. What do you mean no? All right, I want you guys to find me another restaurant where you can take another person there and be under $25. Because you can do it. Oh, no, not Chick-fil-A. I'm about to go. And this will be the other hot take. Chick-fil-A. I will die on this hill. Chick-fil-A these past 4 years, overrated. And I will die on that hill. Because hear me on this. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you could go to Chick-fil-A and you could get a number one sandwich from Chick-fil-A for like $6.99 4 years ago. Today, if you were to go tonight after 3 Strands, you're spending like $10, $11. And the food didn't get bigger, the flavor didn't get better. It's the same size. So I'm just saying it's starting to get expensive, a little overrated. Anybody else have a hot take? Just curious. Anybody else have a hot take? On restaurants. Give me a hot take on a restaurant. I'll give you one more hot take on a restaurant. Wendy's. Wendy's is a top 3 fast food restaurant. I'll join you on that one as well. Y'all, look, everybody who said no, I want to be your friend, because that means you have money. I'm on the 4 for $4 bandwagon. So if you don't like Wendy's, $5 biggie bag. We're upgraded $5 biggie bag. So another hot take, and after I say this, you may be like, Josh, that's not really a hot take. There's nothing spicy about it. It's just kind of boring. Is that friendships are hard but needed. This hot take of friendships are hard but needed. And that's what we're going to land the plane and talk about tonight as we start off our hot take series. This idea that friendships are hard but needed. And you may be like, dude, that's not a hot take. Like, everybody knows that. Like, would you all agree that friendships are hard? They're hard to make. Right, and maintain. Friendships are hard. Would you all agree that friendships are needed? Like, you need friends in your life. Right, so we would all agree that they're hard. We would all agree that they're needed. So that's like general knowledge. Like, dude, there's not a hot take about it. It's not that spicy. Like, it's just kind of chill. But what gets a little bit crazier as we discover this tonight is that if we all agree that friendships are hard, which they are, we all agree that they are needed, which they are, then why do our actions drive us towards isolation versus community? Right? Why do we, with our behavior, our choices, and our decisions, and what we prioritize, we always choose to self-martyr ourselves and isolate ourselves away from friendships, which now makes them hard. So we're going to unpack that tonight. Friendships are hard, but are needed. So it's not that hot, but we're going to unpack it tonight, and we're going to see what the Word says about it. Especially, man, as you unpack it, man, this idea of, when I say friendships tonight, we're referring to a biblical community. So friendships, just go ahead and tie it in your head to biblical community. Is that friendships are hard, but you may be like, Josh, like, friendships are good, they're easy for me, and that's why I want to deconstruct that idea and just point it towards biblical community. Because you can have tons of friends, tons of acquaintances, but are they biblical? Is it biblical community? Like brothers and sisters in your life encouraging you and lifting you up, pointing you towards Jesus? So are they brothers and sisters in your life lifting you up and pointing you towards Jesus? And working at a church, I've seen a common trend in the church world, in the Christian bubble, if you will. And it's this idea of like, man, people will say like, yeah, like I love biblical community. I'm all about it. Like, this is awesome. I agree. Friendships are hard. We need community. We're about it. I go to church once every 8 weeks and we love it. Or it's like, man, I'll never actually commit to a small group, but I really need community. Or I'll church hop between like 4 different churches, but I'll never commit to one, but we really need community. It's like this idea that we all agree we need it. We all agree it's hard, but we have a lot of commitment issues which drive us away from it. It's like we go to 4 or 5 different churches because we like worship here, preaching here, small groups here, and connection groups there, and the vibe here and this here, which stops us from getting planted in one place. Or we just show up like once every 8 weeks and then expect to get the word, expect to get the worship, expect to get the community, but we're only there once every 8 weeks. It's like this idea of our behind what we prioritize is kind of driving us away from the thing we all agreed that we needed. And especially this is the most common reason behind, or justifying reason behind, people not really finding themselves planted in the church, which is what the Bible is actually going to address tonight. So that's this idea of like Josh, I really want to go to church. I'm all about it. Love Monday nights, love small groups, love camps, love retreats, love Sunday mornings. And I really want to be there. Like you want to be there. Your heart desires for you to be there and you want to be there. But it's like work, man. Like my schedule, I just can't get off. Like Josh, you need to call up my boss and tell him to let me off of work. And it revolves around work a lot. Like whether, man, you're working overtime, you got to work 5 jobs just to make the car payment. Like a lot of people that are missing out on biblical community, work is usually the reason why. And just to set the tone tonight, I'm not saying go out and quit your jobs tonight by any means. I'm not saying that. But we're going to see this method or this idea of just chasing the bag, like self-martyring yourself. Like, man, I got to work. I got to save up a lot more money, got to work overtime so I get a time and a half. And the next thing you know, you're working 60 hours in a week, but then you wonder why you never have any friends. Or maybe you're even like here tonight. Like you're here in a large gathering, lots of people here tonight. And you show up to church, you show up to a large gathering, but yet you still feel alone. You show up and you're like, man, why am I still lonely? Like I'm surrounded by people, like physically in your chair right now, you're surrounded by people, yet you still may feel lonely. You may even love Jesus. You may have an amazing, strong relationship with Jesus, and yet still feel lonely. So tonight we're going to get the answer to that. Like how can you still love Jesus, and why do you still feel lonely and love Jesus at the same time? How do you find community? How do you find like you belong to a place somewhere and plant yourself and commit yourself to it? How to not feel lonely and how to build community. We're going to see these 3 things tonight. That money does not satisfy the need for friendships. That how you give and receive correction will determine the depth of your friendship. And that you need community in your life to withstand trials. So we're going to see those 3 things tonight. If you have your Bible, we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. This is tonight, as we kick off this hot take series, we're going to uncover what our theme verse is here with 3 strands. So 3 strands, it comes from Ecclesiastes 4:12. So as we read it, you're going to know the heart and vision behind 3 strands. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 12. And the guy who wrote Ecclesiastes chapter 4, or the book of Ecclesiastes, was King Solomon, one of the wisest guys out there. King, lots of money and really wise. And when he wrote this book of Ecclesiastes, it was towards the end of his life, and it was almost like a looking back on your life, like, hey, younger people, here's what you need to know. Like, here's all the things I've learned, the rights and the wrongs. And this is coming from a dude who had a lot of money. Like, he was a king. Like, a lot of riches, a lot of money, a lot of wealth, a lot of connections, a lot of people, and was one of the wisest guys in the world. So this would be like if your favorite basketball player, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe, like whoever you land with, would be like them writing a letter to a high school team to be like, hey guys, this is what you need to do to make it. This is what Solomon is doing. He's writing this letter to us and say, hey guys, this is what I've learned. Like this is what you need to do because I'm specialized in this area. Like I made the money, I'm really wise, so here's what you need to know. So this is Ecclesiastes chapter 4, starting in verse 7. This is Solomon telling us, here's what I've learned. Here's what you need to know. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. Do you guys know that word meaningless? You know what it translates to? It translates to meaningless. I know, right? But he's like, hey, off the jump, I see something meaningless. It has no meaning and no purpose, no value. I see something meaningless. So Solomon is telling us, hey guys, be on the lookout. I'm about to show you something that is meaningless. Verse 8, there was a man all alone. Underline that, circle that, that is important. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother, so he didn't have any biological brothers or sons or just friends. Like he was all alone, and there was no end to his toil. That word toil means work, meaning he's on the grind, nonstop work, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. Like this guy, Solomon's like, hey, I see something meaningless happening under the sun, which means on earth. This guy is all alone, no brother, no friends, no community. He's all alone, working his life away. And you would think, man, somebody who's like, especially when they're older, like, hey, you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, like, man, you're killing it. If you're working 60, 70 hours a week, banking all the overtime checks, like, you should have a nice life. Like, you should have the car, you should have the boat, the lake house. Like, if it's just you and you're all alone and you're the only person you have to provide for, then you should have a lot of money saved up. And same thing here, like Solomon, a lot of money, but he's like, hey, my eyes were still not content with the wealth I'm accumulating. And man, we can be in that same boat of just chasing the bag. day in and day out. Like, man, I got to get it, got to get the car, got to get the money, got to save up just the right amount in case, stuff hits the fan. And I got to really chase after the bag. I got to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week and run my life away just working away. And Solomon's like, man, there's a meaningless aspect to it. Let's keep reading verse 8. For whom am I toiling? He asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. This word toiling is like, man, who am I working for? Why am I working? What am I doing? And why am I depriving myself or starving myself of enjoyment? Like you would think, man, you got all the money, right? You got all the wealth. Like, what enjoyment are you missing? We here on earth, we would look at anybody with a lot of money and be like, man, like, you got the life, man. Like, you got it. You made it. You are successful. But he's like, man, this is meaningless. Like, I'm starving myself of enjoyment. And we're going to see why. He says this too is meaningless, a miserable business. So why is it meaningless? Why is it miserable? Is this, that money does not satisfy the need for friendships. Going back to our Ask Your Neighbor questions. Like that really exciting news. Like, have you ever got really exciting news before? Like, man, you just got engaged, you just got accepted into college, just got your first job, bought your first car, just something really awesome. Who was the first person you told? This is not rhetorical. You can answer here. Your mom? Okay. Friends? Okay. For me, this moment sparks back to when I was hunting. Me and my dad grew up hunting, deer hunting, ever since I was 13, so like the last 10 years. And we would be in separate tree stands, like 100, 200 yards apart from each other. So we can't see each other. We don't know what's happening. And sometimes when a deer would come out, I'd shoot the deer. The first person I would call would be like, Dad, I just shot it. Like, let's go get it. Like, come on, let's do it. He'd be the first person I tell. Same thing with you guys. Probably a close friend, a close family member. You know who I did not tell? I did not pull up my Wells Fargo app and say, hey, Wells Fargo, guess what, guys? I just shot this deer. You won't believe it. And I just stare at my bank account. Or you guys, like when you had that amazing life moment in your life, pretty sure you did not run to your car outside and stare at your car and be like, man, you will not believe what just happened. This awesome moment just happened. Or I'm pretty sure you did not run to your PS5 or Xbox and be like, guys, I just graduated college. This is awesome. I'm pretty sure you did not run to a materialistical thing to have a life enjoyment celebrated. Like you went to another human. You went to somebody that sees you and values you and cares for you. You didn't go to anything that money could buy. And if we get this idea of like, man, I got to chase the bag so I can buy these certain things to have this success and to have this enjoyment, well, you just proved it to yourself. In the moments when you enjoy life, you don't run to things you buy. Like you run to human relationships because we all have this need for community. We have this need for community, and money will not satisfy that need for community. You have a natural desire to be in community with people, and yet we run ourselves empty, chasing the bag, working 60, 70 hours a week. Just trying to chase something, to feel like we made it. Yet we are depriving ourselves or starving ourselves from enjoyment. This means that chasing money at the sacrifice of biblical community will leave you empty. And this is where we're going to see the balance. That chasing money at the sacrifice of biblical community will leave you empty. Because he said in verse 8, like, man, for whom am I toiling? He asked, like, why? Who am I working for? What am I working for? Like, what is the point of this? Anybody have a job like that? Like, bro, what are we even doing here? Right? Who am I working for? Why am I even doing this? Right? But he's like, man, I got the money, but all this is pointless because in verse 7, there was a man all alone. Right? There was a man all alone, and why am I depriving myself of this enjoyment? Like, I got all this money and nobody to enjoy it with. And I remember when the COVID relief checks came out, what was that, like 3, 4 years, whenever it was, 3, 4, 5 years ago, somewhere around there, the first one. Shout out if you weren't even old enough to get one of those. Sorry, you did not file taxes. But I was, at least an adult at that point. I was a dependent. I filed taxes. And I remember I was working at Cabela's, and when the first COVID check, like the relief check, hit my bank account, I'm like, man, this is like $1,200. Like, I'm rich. I was only 19 at the time, so I didn't know how much $1,200 was. I'm like, man, I'm rich. This is awesome. Like, I just want to go and blow it and just have some fun. And that was my first thought. My second thought was I have absolutely nobody to have fun with. Like, I had the $1,200. Man, this is awesome. This is amazing. Like, let's go hang out. Let's go to Topgolf. Let's go rent a pontoon boat. Like, I got money. Let's go. My second thought was I have absolutely nobody to enjoy this money with. My sister, she was in high school at the time, school. And this is where we see that idea, that you can have the money, And this is what Solomon is trying to get us at, that we can have the money, but if we don't have anybody to even enjoy it with, then what's it worth? Like, if we're sacrificing our community at the cost of just gaining money, then it's depriving ourselves. It's starving ourselves. He says his eyes were not content. Like, he was always chasing something. His eyes were never satisfied. His flesh was never content with where he was at. And man, I get it, right? Because we've been told and we have learned to chase the bag, right? To get the money, to get the dream car, and to get the big house. And many of us have grown up in a way of like, man, we got to do better than our parents and make more money than our parents and be more successful than our parents. And then to just grind some more and hustle some more and then just get more money, do it all in your 20s to set up your 30s. But at the same time, we may be depriving ourselves from one of the things we need the most. And that's what I want us to reframe here. Like, I get it. We've been told and grown up to chase after it. I'm not denying that wealth is a bad thing. Like, money is not a bad thing. Wealth is not a bad thing. But at the sacrifice of biblical community, then you're starting to deprive yourself. Just yesterday, Sunday morning here at church, I'm in the church lobby, and I usually hang out in the lobby to just greet people as they come in, to keep my eyes out for any young adults that come in to help get them plugged in. See this young guy roll in. And I'm like, okay, hey, he looks new. I go up to him, ask him, yeah, this is your first time here at church. Awesome. Where are you from? Oh, Charlotte. Okay, cool. What are you doing tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m.? He's like, man, I got to work. I said, bro, you got to call off. Like, change your shift. Like, get there. What about next week? Man, I got to work. And, man, this is a very common trend. That, man, you probably have experienced it if you ever invited somebody to church or to small group. Like, man, they just got to work. And same thing with you guys. Like, I probably invited you to a lot of things. Like, man, I got to work. And, again, work is not bad and money is not bad. But if we're doing it out of this motive that, hey, we're already provided for, we're already caring for, but I just need that extra bonus check. Is that extra bonus check worth depriving yourself from something you need? Is it worth it? And again, it's not bad to be wealthy. If you guys go out, I want us all to leave here to be wealthy, be a millionaire. Just don't forget about 3 strands when you do it. Just make sure, still look out for the little people, but don't get caught chasing the bag at the sacrifice of biblical community. And some of you here, man, you are absolutely working your butt off. Like, you are chasing it and making it happen at the sacrifice of community, which is why you show up here and you're like, man, why do I feel lonely? Like, I'm around people. I'm physically in this place around 70 people. Why do I feel lonely? Right? You show up to a large gathering, you feel lonely. You have an amazing relationship with Jesus, yet you feel lonely. It's because you may be sacrificing biblical community for just chasing the bag. And it takes this commitment to actually build community. There's this building part. Like, for example, when Kayla and I started dating last year, if I was like, hey, on our first date, if I was like, hey, look, this is awesome. I loved hanging out with you. I really want to pursue this. I loved it. This was amazing. Hey, I'll reach out to you in 6 weeks. Let's go on another date in 6 weeks. And I don't talk to you for the next 6 weeks and then expect to go on a date in 6 weeks. I'm probably not getting that second date. Like, it's not going to work out that well. But in the same way, if we show up to church like, hey, man, I loved it. I loved hanging out. Like, this was great. I really love what we got going on here. Hey, I'll reach out to you guys in 6 weeks. Like, what? Like, you can't build a relationship that way. You can't build a friendship that way. And we as believers, like, we need community. So if we expect it to just magically happen when we show up somewhere every 8 weeks or 6 weeks, it's not going to take root. We're not going to be planted. And 3 strands, I say that because we as 3 strands, we're connected to about 200 young adults. Like, there are about 200 of you guys, of us, that have come to a 3 strands in the last 8 weeks. You'd be like, man, well, why are there so many empty seats? Like, what's going on here? There's not 200 people here. But it's because we got this mentality of, man, I can show up like once every 8 weeks, get my Jesus shot for 8 weeks, then get the word for 8 weeks, and then worship, and then in 8 more weeks, I'll come back and just rinse and repeat, and then expect to be spiritually cared for and expect to have friendships that have my back and hold me accountable. Like, it doesn't work. Like, it takes this aspect of building it, of committing to it. And if you are sacrificing that community for the sake of money, it gets a very slippery slope. Because 1 Timothy 6:10 says, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves for many griefs. So when that desire to chase the bag at the sacrifice community, if that desire gets fed a little bit more and starts to turn into a love for money, the Bible says, man, that's a red flag there. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. That loving of it, that prioritizing of it, that idolizing of it. And I get we've heard that we need to have we need to have the emergency funds saved up. Yes, be wise, 100%. Don't be reckless with your finances. Be wise, steward them in a biblical manner. And at the same time, it's a temporary thing. Like you came here with nothing, you're going to leave with nothing. Don't sacrifice chasing that bag and starving yourself for the community. And you're gonna see that we need community. The need for community will be filled in two ways. The need for community will be filled in two ways. And the first one is you personally need to commune with Jesus. That word commune, have community with Jesus, have a relationship with Jesus, hang out with Jesus. You personally, we as humans, our first avenue of community needs to be filled through Jesus. No one else, nothing else. Solely through Jesus. A very common thought is, man, why do I love Jesus so much, but yet I feel alone? Why am I alone? And that is theologically impossible. That if you are a Christian, it is theologically impossible for you to be alone. Because in Psalms 139, verse 7, it says this, where can I go from your spirit? Talking about the Holy Spirit. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? Then verse 8 says, if I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths of the sea, you are also there. Like David is writing, like, I cannot go anywhere to escape the presence of God. That if you are a believer, like, you cannot go anywhere to escape the presence of God. Like, God is with you 24/7. So it is theologically impossible for you to be alone. But now it's like, okay, I know I'm not alone, but why do I still feel alone? Right? Like, me and Jesus, we're cool, we're good, beautiful relationship. Why do I still feel alone? And it's because, man, there's this building community part. That if you're not doing what it takes to build friendships, like you don't just show up someplace and magically meet 10 people and they know everything about you and you know everything about them. Like, you have to build it. You have to commit to it. You have to fight for it and not give up on it. This idea of community, not give up on it. Hebrews 10:25 says this, not giving up on meeting together, like congregational worship, gathering together. Not giving up on it. Like, don't give up on it. On the days that you don't want to show up, the days you do want to show up, the days when people make you mad, when there's drama, don't give up on it. Don't give up on meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing. Like, because it can get really easy to get in the habit of, man, I didn't go last week, so nobody's probably going to miss me, so I probably won't go this week. Forget about a small group. Like, they're weird. Like, the world is in the habit of forsaking gathering as Christians. We as believers, as brothers and sisters, that should not be our habit. Man, I remember growing up, pastor's kid, this is the bubble you grow up in, Christian world, relate if you're there with me, that it was not even a question if you go to church on Sunday. Like, if I were to have friends sleep over, it could not happen on Saturday night because we got church on Sunday. And I didn't want to take my school friends to church. Like, it was just not a thing. Like, church on Sunday. There was one moment we were really bad. Like, we didn't have any cars. Both of our cars, family cars, broke down, so a friend lends us his car. And it was a Ford Ranger, with 3 seats in the front, then truck bed in the back. We were a family of 5, a family of 6. So my dad and my 2 sisters sit in the front row. Me, my mom, and brother in the truck bed, going down 77 just to get to church. Like, it was the thing. Like, I'm serious. Like, we would ride in the bed of the truck just to get here. Like, that was the habit I grew up in. Like, because I was raised that way, it's the habit I grew up in and took root. Like, for me, I love Sundays. I love Mondays. I love Wednesday nights. Like, whenever the people are there, whenever you guys are there, I love it. That's the habit I grew up in. And I pray that we all have that habit and not give up on it. Don't give up on it. Press forward. Say no to things so you can say yes to gathering as believers. And this is why it's important, right? You can have the money, you can have the cars and the dream jobs, like many celebrities that we know. Cardi B, Justin Bieber, Dwayne Johnson, Katy Perry, they all have something in common. Is that they all at one point came out to say, look, I've chased it, I've had it, it's not worth it. I've been depressed. Like, they all came out saying they were depressed. Like, celebrities that we would look at and be like, man, like, you got the life, you got the Instagram followers, you got the influence, you got the money, like you did it. I want what they have. They're like, dude, you don't want what I have. It's meaningless. Like, I came out depressed. This money vanished. Like, it's not worth it. So you have to fight for it. Money will buy you pleasure, not joy. It'll buy you moments, but not community. And man, like, we have the right desire, though. Like, you guys, we have the right desire. And the desire, right, to be accepted, to be valued, to be seen, to be appreciated, wanting to have the pleasures and joy of life and not in a sinful way. Like, that desire is okay. Like, that's not a bad desire to have. To be seen, to be valued, to be accepted, to want the pleasures and joy and not a sinful way. It's a great desire. It's a natural desire you've been born with. But if that desire is not being satisfied in Jesus, it's going to remain an unsatisfied desire. You're going to keep chasing the bag, chasing the money to try to fill that desire, and you won't. Jesus said in John 14:6, he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Like, if you want to know which way to go, is Jesus. If you want to know what is right and wrong, Jesus. If you want to know where the party's at, he's like, I'm the life. Like, I'm life-giving life. Like, I'm the life. Like, if you want to be satisfied with your desires of fulfillment, he's like, I'm the life. It's right there. No one comes to the Father except through me, which is why that first avenue to fill community is needing to be communing with Jesus. Like, he's like, hey, I got all you need, all you desire. It's right here in him, right? The life, beautiful, amazing, redeeming, forgiving, gracious life in Jesus. It's only in Jesus. So it's the right desire. We have the right desire. You guys have the right desire. We just need to shift that focus to fulfilling that desire in Jesus. So we need to commune with Jesus first. And then we commune with each other. Hebrews 10:25. We commune with each other as brothers and sisters. So money does not satisfy the need for friendship. What we should do about it is evaluate. Are you so busy right now chasing the money, the job, the career, that your relationship with Jesus, communing with Jesus, is fading away? I mean, I can't get in the Word. I just got to get up at work, and I got to get up so early, and I went to bed so late, and I don't have time to pray, and I don't have time to worship or read the Word because I got to get to work, and I got to get to work, or you got to get to work. And then are you also like sacrificing, gathering together because of some type of way of chasing the bag? Like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. If your answer is yes, then you may be depriving yourself or starving yourself. And what we should do about it is commune with Jesus first, him first, because he's going to fulfill that natural desire to be seen, to be valued, to be loved, to be accepted, for joy, for love, for peace, for grace. Like, communing with him first, and then with each other. Make it a priority to not give up meaning together. Like, do what you got to do, right, man? Shift some work schedules around if you need to. Like, it's okay. Like, you can shift some work schedules around if you need to. The world may not end. Like, set an alarm clock maybe to show up to church. Like, the world will not end if you set an alarm clock, right? Get out of that FOBO, the fear of a better option, and commit somewhere. Like, hey, I want to go to this church, but if I go here, then I can't go there, and those friends might be showing up there. Man, even if it's not here, right? This is not a plug that you all have to commit to three. It's not a plug for Three Strands of Steel Creek. This is a plug for the local church. Like, we have to plant and commit ourselves to the local church. So let's keep reading Ecclesiastes chapter 4, starting in verse 9 now. Again, two are better than one. So he starts out, hey, there's something meaningless, a man all alone. Now he's hitting that point again about one person being alone. He says two people are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. Right? The guys were like, hey, I see something meaningless. It's a man working all alone. So now two people are better than one. Many hands make light work. Every time we gather here on Monday nights, if it's just one person setting up all these chairs, it's going to take them forever. If it's just one person putting back all these chairs, it's going to take till tomorrow. But when there's two people, when there's other hands making it happen, like you guys making it happen, it's actually better. Like, there's a return. Like, they can lift each other up. They can support each other. This is also a reference to Genesis 2:18 when God created Adam and said, it is not good for a man to be alone, so he created a helper, Eve. Verse 10, if either of them falls, so two are better than one because they have good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity, that word pity means a sorrow or sympathy for someone else's misfortune or suffering. Pity the one who falls but has no one to help them up. Sorrow for their misfortune and suffering, that if you fall down, you have nobody to help you up. Like, that's a deep level. Like, if you are going through life isolated and alone, that, man, Solomon's like, we have pity for you. We have a deep sorrow that you are suffering for your misfortune. Like, don't just skim over that. Verse 11, also if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And this is our three strands verse 12. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of three strands is not easily broken. And this is where we see our second point. How you give and receive correction will determine the depths of your friendship. How you give and receive correction will determine the depth of your friendship. It changes from acquaintances to a community, to having each other's back. Me and, you guys may know him, Austin Biddy. He's our youth pastor here. And me and Austin, we worked in youth ministry for, 4 or 5 years together. Like, we were a great 1-2 punch. I love that guy. Love that brother. He's amazing. Me and him are two humans who see things differently. If I think green, he thinks blue. If I think white, he thinks red. If I say turn left, he says turn right. And that's okay. Like, neither of us are wrong or right, but we just see things differently. So there became a moment working together where we would butt heads a lot. Like, if I think the color should be green, he thinks red, either of us can be right or wrong. We just think differently. And that moment kept causing tension, until one day, like, we wouldn't even talk to each other. Like, we would just make bad assumptions about each other. Until me, him, and Cam, Pastor Cam, my boss, you guys have met him before, we all sat down to hash it out, to talk through it. And man, going into that room to know, man, he's about to let it rip at me and everything I've fumbled and didn't do, and I'm about to let it rip at him and be like, well, you did this. I mean, going into that room, it was uncomfortable. It was awkward. It was not fun. I knew going in he was going to let me have it, and I was going to let him have it. Like, it was not fun. I didn't jump in there with joy. But so I said what I had to say. He said what he needed to say. And then leaving that room, we were able to leave that room as brothers. Like, we left that room with a deeper level of friendship because I was able to sit there and receive correction. I was able to give correction in a non-defensive way. Same thing with him. And now to this day, our relationship has benefited from that moment. Like, and so how you give and receive correction will determine the depth of your friendship, right? And going back to the verse that if somebody falls and no one is there to pick them up, do you know when someone or how someone falls and has no one to pick them up? Like, you got to be really, really, really alone for you to fall, for you to stumble in life and have absolutely nobody notice. Like, some of us show up to church and we're like, man, they just don't know what I'm going through. They'll never get it. They'll never understand. Why does nobody care for me? But you show up every 8 weeks and we don't know you. And this is why. It's either because you either push people away who came into your life that loved you enough to tell you the truth and to give you correction, but you push them away to say, no, don't tell me that. And you got really defensive. Or you don't have people in your life that know you enough, that know you in and out, left and right, to actually give you truth and love and accountability. So that leaves you falling with nobody there to pick you up. Or that leaves you about to fall with nobody there to correct you. Because we either have pushed people away that loved us enough to tell us the truth, or we never surrounded ourselves with people who would love us enough to tell us the truth. In both of those matters, the ball is in your court. Verse 10, if either of them falls, one can help the other up. But pity the one who falls and has no one to help them up. How you give and receive correction will determine the depth of your friendship. This means you need to listen and speak up. You need to listen. Like, if you have a mature brother or sister in Christ that is pursuing Jesus and chasing Jesus, and they come to you and say, hey, look, man, we should probably stop getting drunk on Friday night. Listen to them. Like, that is biblical sound advice. Same thing, like if you see something going on and you've communed with Jesus first, so you're taking the log out of your eye, and you see something going on, speak up out of love. Say, hey, look, man, I love you enough to say this is probably not a good idea. How you give and receive correction will determine the depth of your friendship. It will determine the depth of your friendship. But that is why we need to commune with Jesus first. Because if you're not a mature follower of Jesus and you try to give somebody else correction, they'll be like, boy, you hypocrite, what are you doing? Right? Or if you're not communing with Jesus first and you're mature and somebody tries to correct you, you're going to be like, get out of here. And stiff arm them in the face, which is why we need to commune with Jesus first. Galatians 6:1-2 says, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit, again, communing with Jesus first, you're living by the Spirit, should restore that person gently. But watch yourself so you also may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens in this way so you fulfill the law of Christ. How you give and receive correction will determine the depth of your friendship. That first you're walking in the Spirit, then you can restore a brother or sister gently, and they could also restore you. And this is important because you don't have to carry your burdens alone now. Right? It's like, hey, we need people in our life to cast the burdens on, to carry the load, to lock arms and say, look, you just walked through a divorce? Okay, hey, we're all walking through this now, like together. Hey, you just had this bad situation? Okay, we're all walking through this together. Like, to carry the burden, to not feel like you are the only person fighting this fight of life, but you can share that burden. Say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Will you pray for me? Will you hold me accountable? Will you show up for me? Will you lock arms with me? And if they are mature, brother and sister in Christ, they'll say, heck yeah, bro, like, let's go. I got your back. And this is why having biblical community consistently around you keeps you from falling. Like, they may notice something like quickly, like, oh, hey, let's turn left, not right. Keeps you from falling. Or if you do fall, they're there to pick you up. With no condemnation, no shame, no judgment. Say, hey, look, guys, let's keep going. This is where we see our third and last point. You need community in your life to withstand trials. Verse 12, Ecclesiastes 4:12 says, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. You guys know what a strand is? It's that, right? But you know what's different about this? You know what makes it a strand? Believe it or not, a strand is multiple strings woven together. And many of us going through life, we are a string and not a strand. Like you are an individual and you are a string. Like you're just an individual. And what separates a string from a strand is that a strand has multiple strings woven together, knitted together, braided together in the same way. You as an individual, a string, to form a 3-stranded cord or 3 strands that is not quickly broken, you need to be woven and braided together with some other believers. Like, I think many times, like, hey, look, God, me and you are good. We show up to church, we worship, we do our devos. All that's amazing. But if you are doing that and you are just a string, you're out there on your own island and nobody knows you, nobody knows what's going on, nobody knows about the secret sin going on, and it's just you fighting that fight alone, it says one can be overpowered. Like you can be defeated. You by yourself, you will be defeated if you are just a string. But you need to allow yourself and allow other people in to become a braided cord, a stranded cord. And who you allow in, very, very, very important. Who you seek wisdom from and counsel from, very, very, very important. If you do not see the fruit of them pursuing Jesus and chasing after Jesus with everything they got, I would not take their advice. If their advice is contrary to this, I would also not take their advice. But you need people in your life. And it doesn't mean you need spiritual giants in your life. Like, I got to go find all the 70-year-old spiritual giants out there, and we got to grab breakfast at Waffle House. Like, not saying that. But you need people, as Paul said, that are running their race for first place. Not perfect people, faithful people. That, hey, look, I mess up, you mess up, we all mess up. But who are the faithful ones that we can lock arms with? That when we do mess up, we carry each other's burdens, we repent, we confess, keep moving. So we need to be a strand and not a string, which takes work, right? To weave individual cords together, it takes work, right? You can't just take these pieces of string and they're just going to naturally weave themselves together. It takes somebody coming along and twisting it and turning it and braiding them together when it's uncomfortable, when it's vulnerable, when it's not fun, when it gets sticky, when it gets messy. But that's where the strength is now, because it's woven together. Man, and that's my prayer for us as a community, that we allow people in and also be the people for. That we all don't just sit on the sideline and say, hey, I need people in my life, people in my life. Yes, but also be the other person in somebody else's life. Like you commune with Jesus first, a mature follower of Jesus, and then you step into another person's life, not to be hypocritical, but to lovingly correct, to speak the truth in love, because we're stronger together and we can bear each other's burdens. So to summarize all this, money does not satisfy the need for friendship. Man, don't give up gathering together. Don't forsake gathering together. Like, fight for this. You know, call off of work, get a babysitter. Like, fight for this. Don't give up on it. Make it a priority. And if you are chasing money at the sacrifice of biblical community, you are starving yourself. You are depriving yourself. How you give and receive correction will determine the depths of your friendship. Right? It starts with you communing with Jesus first. It starts always with you and Jesus first. And everything you desire, he will fulfill. That's who he is, and that's what he does. You have the right desire, fulfill it in Jesus. Listen, but also speak up. And you need community in your life to withstand trials. To when something not so fun happens, you have people that you can help bear the burden with. And you can lock arms together. Be a strand, not a string. Just kind of close. You guys know, how do you weaken this? Like, what is the quickest way to weaken it? Is it with a flamethrower, scissors, a knife? What is the quickest way to weaken it? Unravel it, right? You can come up here with scissors, you can come up here with a machete, a flamethrower, but the quickest way to weaken this is you slowly do what's happening here, and you just start unraveling it. And you just start unraveling it. Yeah, I'm not going to do it all the way. That'll take forever. But that, in the same way, there we go. You unravel it. And in the same way, this is what Satan really does to us when it comes to community. Right? And it feels like, man, the quickest way to attack this will be with a sword, with a machete, a flamethrower, somebody try to chop it in half. like the quickest way to attack you and your community or your gathering or your local church is just this big bombshell that comes in and blows everything up. But all Satan wants to do is divide you and unravel you, right? He wants you to get some drama with some other people that you don't want to talk to now and you don't want to forgive, and then it just starts to unravel you a little bit more. And now next thing you know, you turn into a strand because you allowed Satan to deceive you and unravel you. You grew a heart of bitterness, a heart of unforgiveness, and now you're like, man, I want nothing a part of that. And now you're just a string. And then the quickest way to go from a string to strands is that you weave it back together. You braid it back together. But that takes time. That takes vulnerability. That takes a moment of building it and committing to it to not give up on it. And that's my prayer for us tonight, to not give up on it. Satan wants to divide this all day long. He wants to do everything he can to stop what is happening. He wants to do everything he can to stop you from gathering with other people, to have them in your life, to pray for you, to worship with you, to carry each other's burden. Like Satan wants to turn you into a strand and make you think like, bro, you're good. You got Jesus. Everything's straight. Like, you're good. This is not a salvation issue. Right? I'm not talking about a salvation issue. This is after salvation. On top of that, we need each other to carry each other's burden. So I want to invite our prayer team up and our leadership team. So I'm going to pray for us, but just like every Monday night, they're here. Like if there's a burden you are carrying, and you're like, man, I need to bring people into my life to carry this burden, we're here. Like we want to pray through those moments, talk through those moments, and carry the burden with you. If you're like, hey man, so how do I find this? Like give me some more information about this community thing. We're here. Like whatever questions you may have, whatever you want prayer for, whatever you're seeking, if you're like, man, I need to start with Jesus. I need to commune with Jesus first. What does that look like? Because I have these desires. I'm trying to fulfill them in other things. What does that look like? We're here. So I'm going to pray for us corporately, and they're here to stay and talk through whatever you guys want to talk through. Let's pray.